Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and to a different kind of video. I haven't done anything like this for a while. This is a planning kind of video. I decided to do a Disney World trip pre-travel checklist. So this is just talking through everything that you need to think about before a trip to Disney World. It can apply to general travel, some of the things that I'm going to be talking about, and some of it is specific to Disney World, but it's all stuff that you need to think about. Some of it is very obvious, some of it not so much, and things that can be easily forgotten. So if you have a trip coming up soon, or even if you're in the early stages of planning, you can make yourself a list of these things, or if you've already got a list, you can kind of add on anything that you may not have thought of. So grab yourself a drink and get your planning documents ready, and let's get into it. The first thing will seem an obvious one, but that is your passport. Do not forget, obviously, to bring your passport with you. That is the most crucial thing. But beforehand, when you're in the planning stages, make sure that your passport is in date. Sometimes it's easy to forget how long you have left on it, and it does need to be in date. So the date of your return to the UK, you need to obviously make sure it's still valid then. It used to be that you had to have 6 months on it. I don't think that is the case anymore. If it is, I'll put it on the screen, but I'm fairly certain it's not. But you do need to make sure it's valid for your travel dates. And also just be careful of name changes as well. So if you have changed your name, if you got married or divorced or anything, and say you booked your trip quite a while ago, make sure that the name on the booking of the flight is the same as the name on your passport. If not, you won't be able to travel. So you may need to either change the name on the booking or actually change the passport, whichever way around, but it does need to be the same. So just make sure you're aware of that. And like I said, just making sure that your passports for everyone in your group are actually valid. The next thing is an ESTA. So everyone in your party will need to have an ESTA, which is the US's kind of visa waiver program. So some people do have an actual visa, but anyone who's just visiting on holiday or on vacation, you will need to get yourselves an ESTA. You can do that online, and be very careful online because there's a lot of kind of weird companies that will do your ESTA for you. I think you probably would end up with an ESTA at the end of it, but you put in your details and it all looks completely legitimate as if it's the proper website, but it's not. It's actually a third-party company, and then when you get to the end, I've seen ones that then try and charge you like $50, $60, $70 or something per ESTA. It should be about 14, I think it is now, 14 or $15. I'm sure it's somewhere around there. So watch out for these websites that are not the actual proper ESTA website. I'll link it below so that you can make sure you go to the right one, and you need to make sure everyone in your party has one of those. And again, you need to make sure the name on the ESTA is the same as the passport, which is also the same as the name that the airline have for you. And also another way to get caught out is if you have lost or damaged your passport and then got a new one, you will need to then get a new ESTA. So ESTAs last for 2 years, but if you in that intervening time have lost or damaged your passport and got a new one, the passport number will then be wrong on the ESTA, so you will have to get a new ESTA. So don't get caught out with that one as well, because that can be easily done and you think, oh yeah, I've got an ESTA, but it won't be with the right passport number if you have had to get a new one. So just be careful with that too. A question that I get asked a lot is about how to take spending money. So I used to take my money back in the early days in cash. I don't anymore. I will take a little bit of cash, but only enough for tipping bell services or anyone that I might need to tip kind of in person. Whereas in restaurants, for example, when you get the check, you can add your tip on if you're paying by card, which is what I always do. So I take very, very minimal cash with me. These days, I always use Bank. This is the card that I have. It's just a regular debit account, but it's all done online, so they don't have physical kind of banks like high street banks that you can go into. It's all done via an app. It's very, very easy to set up, but it is just like a regular debit account, but they don't charge any foreign transaction fees. So if you use your debit card or your credit card from a normal high street bank, they usually charge per transaction, like a fee, and then you get charged another fee, which is like the conversion or something. I don't know what it is, but you normally get 2 for every single time you use it, and it really mounts up. Whereas Starling, they don't charge any foreign transaction fees for any of it. You can take cash out as well in ATMs over there, and it won't charge you for that. The ATM may charge you, but Starling Bank won't charge. It's just really easy. You can use this contactless. I have it connected up to my Apple Wallet, so I can just tap and easily spend my money that way. And it'll always come up on the screen with a notification, and you can just check how much you've spent in pounds, even though you're obviously spending in dollars. So it's nice and easy. Really is the best way, in my opinion, to take your spending money. It's easy to transfer from your main bank account into your Starling one. Monzo is very similar as well. I just happen to use Starling and I love them, so I can't speak for Monzo, but I know other people who use that, and it works in a very similar way. And I'll link that in the description as well, so you can check that out. Another thing to mention is the fact that there are no longer any COVID requirements. So when travel first reopened, you had to provide a negative test and all that kind of thing. Then that was dropped, but you did still have to prove vaccination status. All of that has now gone if you're traveling from the UK to the States. Do check if you're in different countries. Just bear in mind that all of the advice I'm giving is if you are traveling from the UK. Some countries may still have things in place that I don't know about. So if you're not in the UK, always check ahead of time to make sure that there isn't anything different. But from the UK, you no longer have to prove vaccination or do anything to do with COVID. That has all gone now. Advanced passenger information is another thing that you have to provide to the airline ahead of your flight, and you do that on the website or through the app if you're traveling with BA or Virgin Atlantic. I'm not sure about the other airlines, I'm sure it's much the same, but you just need to put in a little bit of information, your passport number, the address of where you're going to be staying. So you'll need the address of the hotel or the villa, or if you're staying with family or whatever, wherever you're going to be staying, you need to have that address and input that into the airline's website ahead of time. Doing that before you travel means that when you come to online check-in, if you're going to do that 24 hours before, or whether you're just going to go to the airport to check in, it just saves time if you've already given that information. And if you're sort of doing the organising for everybody, just make sure you've put that in for every member of your party, so then check-in should be a lot easier when you come to do that. Another thing to speak to the airline about ahead of time is if anyone in your party requires special assistance. So if anyone is in a wheelchair or you have mobility issues, which mean you're going to need help from the aircraft to the security areas to sort of get off the plane basically, make sure you do tell the airline ahead of time. That's not the kind of thing you want to leave until the last minute or until you get to the airport, because they need to communicate that to the ground staff at the other end, and that's definitely something that needs to be sorted out ahead of time. So don't forget that if you have anyone who needs assistance. Another thing to think about is obviously getting to the airport. If you live fairly close and someone's just dropping you off, that's fairly easy. If like me you live a little bit further away, I like to stay over the night before. I am just too worried about trying to travel to the airport on the day of the flight. Even if it's not an early flight, there are just so many things that can happen. If you're traveling by road and there's an accident or something, roads can get closed for hours on end, and I have known people miss their flights for that reason. Public transportation in the UK is not the best when it comes to being reliable, and you wouldn't want anything like that happening. So I would say if you live at any distance from the airport, probably an airport hotel is a good idea. If you're driving to the airport, you will also need to think about airport parking. And again, that's something that I would organise ahead of time. If you leave it till the last minute, it can get more and more expensive. There are different options for that. Like if you want to go right to the terminal, there are companies where you can drop your car off, someone takes the keys and then they will go and park it kind of wherever off-site that it's going to be left for the couple of weeks. Or you can drive to that car park yourself and then you just get a little shuttle bus over to the terminal. It really depends how much it is, for one thing, because usually it's cheaper if you're dropping it off at the car park yourself and then getting the shuttle across. If you want the service where they meet you at the terminal and then take it away for you, that can be a little bit more expensive. Also, I know some people just really don't like somebody else driving their car. I know that some people are not bothered, but I actually wouldn't like that. I have my car is not vintage, it is currently, I would say, a modern classic, but it's 21 years old. It is a very old car that I don't want anything to happen to, and I don't feel comfortable with strangers driving my car. So for me personally, I would not like that, and I know some people don't. So look into your options. I quite often use Holiday Extras. That is a good website to do your parking, and you can check out airport hotels on there as well. If I'm staying at Gatwick, I tend to stay at the Premier Inn at North Terminal or the Gatwick Central Travel Lodge. That would be a bit cheaper because you do have to get an Uber there and back, whereas the Premier Inn is right there at North Terminal, but it is usually quite a bit more expensive. Gatwick hotels for some reason have just gone through the roof in price since the pandemic. Heathrow is still pretty reasonable. When I go there, I usually stay at the Premier Inn on Bath Road and it's fine, but for some reason Gatwick is always super expensive. That's why I try to avoid flying from there if I can, because the hotels cost so much. Sometimes you might be getting public transport. Of course, you need to organise that as well. Over at Heathrow, they have a tube station at the airport. It's at Terminal 3, I think. So if you're coming on a train into London, say like Paddington or somewhere, then you would be able to just get on, I think it's the Elizabeth line, and there might be another one as well. Gatwick has a mainline train station there, so usually if you're coming on a train from anywhere, it will just bring you to the Gatwick train station, and that's right there at the terminal. But definitely if you're coming from any distance, I would consider coming up the day before and getting a hotel just to take that stress away from trying to travel up on the day of, because I used to do it in the early years and leave at like 2 o'clock in the morning or something, but yeah, it can be a bit of a stressful experience, so usually it can be good to stay overnight the night before. Also, National Express buses are pretty good, and there is a bus station at the Heathrow terminal and also at Gatwick, and I usually find them cheaper and a bit easier, to be honest. When you're doing trains, especially if you have to change, you're kind of dragging your suitcase on and off, sometimes the luggage rack is full and all that kind of thing, whereas buses I just find actually a little bit easier, and they're usually cheaper as well, and they're more reliable in the UK. Trains in the UK, especially of late, have not been very reliable. Quite often there are strikes or there's problems, so I tend to just prefer getting buses just so that I know that I am going to be able to get there. And another thing to think about if you are renting a car when you get to Orlando is to make sure you bring your driver's license. Don't forget that. If you are going to be the one driving, you will need to show that when you pick up your car. If you're not going to be driving, I would recommend downloading the Uber app, or you could use Lyft as well. Maybe download both, just so that you have both of them on hand. But that's quite often how I get around in Orlando. If I'm not using the Disney transportation, I mostly would use Uber. If you're going to be getting a transfer from the airport and you want to use like the Mears Connect service, Mears Connect and Sunshine Flyer have now merged together. It's called Mears Connect driven by Sunshine, I think, which I don't know, I find that name really comical. I don't know why. I find it funny. It's not funny at all. It sounds weird. I feel like they could have probably come up with something else, but anyway, the two companies have come together now, so if you book Mears, it kind of is also Sunshine Flyer, but I don't think they're going to be having the vehicles like the buses with the trains on them. They were pretty cool, so that's a shame, but now that is going to be like one big service. So if you need to book that, obviously do that ahead of time as well, because occasionally dates do get full up for that. Or if you're getting an Uber, obviously you would want to have your app ready to go. You don't want to have to stress about trying to download it when you actually get there, so make sure you remember to do that ahead of time. The next thing to think about is your mobile phone plan. So whenever you are traveling from the UK to go abroad, you want to be able to use your phone. Wi-Fi is a lot better than it used to be in most places. I remember in the early days of traveling, it was really hard to get Wi-Fi anywhere, but most places are pretty good now. However, the Wi-Fi can drop very easily whether you're in Disney or somewhere else, and it is good if you can use your regular data. However, you definitely don't want to just start using your phone without knowing how much it's going to cost, because if you do just start using it and it's charging you, that is no joke. Like, it can be seriously expensive, and you don't want to get a nasty shock when you get back home from your lovely vacation and then you suddenly get hit with some absolutely horrendous phone bill. So I use O2, and the plan that I'm on, it just allows me to use my phone as normal. So I don't even have to do anything. I just turn up and I get a text through when I turn my phone on when I get to Orlando Airport, and it just says, welcome to O2 roaming, you can use your phone as normal, including data. So that's really good, but not every plan has that as standard. Sometimes you do have to add it on or pay a bit extra. A lot of them will send you a text and it says something like, for £5 per day you can use X amount of text, calls and data, but £5 per day is quite a lot of money, and if there's multiple people in your party, if everyone's spending £5 per day, that could be quite pricey. So just investigate that before you go away. If you have a plan that doesn't include data, you could get yourself a SIM card from a different network that includes data while you're abroad and use that instead. Obviously that's not so good for getting incoming calls and things because you'll be on a different number, but just for the purposes of using data, I think 3 have a good plan, just like a pay-as-you-go 3 SIM, so you could look into that. But I would probably be more inclined to want to alter my phone plan that I have to include the data, so just make sure you look into that before you go away. Another thing I would recommend doing is downloading Find My iPhone, or whatever the equivalent is on Android. I'm not quite sure. I think they have something that's similar. If you're traveling with more than one person and you've both got iPhones or both got Android, I think, or if you have your laptop with you, sometimes people travel with their laptop, it just means that you will have some means of finding your phone if you lose it. Trust me, I'm speaking from experience. If you watched my vlogs in May when I went with mum, I left my phone on the monorail at the airport. Completely had a panic when I realised I didn't have it, and because I had my laptop I was able to see that it was back there. So they were telling me they didn't have it and I was like, it's back there, like I can see it here on the screen, it is there. So I would recommend downloading that onto your phone if you haven't already, so that if anybody's phone does get lost you should be able to locate it, because if you don't have anything like that you could have completely lost it then, and that would be a pain. So yeah, don't forget to download something like that to be able to locate it. So getting on to the kind of Disney stuff that you need to think about. The first one is your park tickets. Now, if you've booked a package, I can't speak for if you've booked packages through other companies because I don't know how they work things, but if you booked through Disney, which is who I usually book through, your tickets will not be like a physical ticket, it will be online with My Disney Experience. So once you have booked your trip, you sometimes are given a confirmation number that you need to put in for the ticket, but other times I've noticed it's just there. If you've booked a package and linked your resort reservation, kind of the whole thing has been linked up. But it might be that they send you a separate ticket number that you just need to link in My Disney Experience, but you may never have a physical ticket to actually use. Now, when you arrive at Disney, if you don't have a magic band, then you could go to guest services and they will be able to give you a physical ticket to scan into the parks, but you can use your phone now. If you put it into like your Apple wallet, you can scan that way. Like I said, you can have a magic band. If you've had one from a previous trip and that's linked to your account, then that will just automatically work. Once your ticket is linked, you'll be able to scan yourself into the parks that way. Some of the other ticket companies who sell UK tickets might send you a physical ticket, which will look something like this. So if you have these, obviously take them with you. If you've got a magic band, you don't really need this, but I tend to keep this with me in my bag at all times. In my case, it's my annual pass, but this is a regular park ticket. But just keep it with you in case you forget your magic band or you have any kind of problem. If you do have a physical ticket, just remember to bring it with you. Other attractions that you might have purchased tickets for, such as Universal or Busch Gardens or Kennedy Space Center, anything like that, a lot of the companies do still send you like a physical ticket in the post. Do not forget to bring those with you. I know people who have forgotten their tickets. So they had their Disney tickets, they had their Universal, but they booked for like 5 of them to go to Busch Gardens and they'd forgotten those tickets. And that can be a real issue. If you can't necessarily, like sometimes the company can't do anything about it if you don't physically have the tickets. So anything that you've bought kind of extra tickets for, special events, again with Disney, it will show in My Disney Experience, so it's not too much of an issue. But other places, if you've bought anything like that, just do not forget any tickets for any parks or events or anything like that that you've purchased. And another thing that you will need to do is make your park reservations. In order to enter the Disney parks, you need to have that reservation for whichever park you want to go to that day. And you need to make a reservation for the first park that you intend to go to. You can park hop from 2 p.m. onwards to a different park, but you do need to have a reservation for the first park that you plan to go to that day. Sometimes you might change your mind on the day and not want to go to the park that you've booked, but book a different one. You can go into the app and change it. Usually there's availability, but just be aware occasionally, with Hollywood Studios and Magic Kingdom especially, at busy times, they might have run out for that day, in which case you would have to go to the original park you'd planned, say it was Epcot, and then you'd have to hop to the other one later. But just make sure you've got those park reservations in place for every member of your party if you're traveling for the rest of 2023. To do that, you go onto the My Disney Experience app and then you just find the tab for theme park reservations, and it'll show you the calendars to show you what availability they have. And the availability still varies whether you've just got a ticket, like say you're staying in a villa and you've just got a regular ticket, or if you're staying in a hotel at Disney, or if you're an annual pass holder, there's like different availability for all of those things. And just in case anyone was wondering, Universal don't have the same system. So if you're going to the Universal parks, you just have your tickets and just go along whenever you want to go. You don't have to make reservations there. And like I was saying, as of 2024, you won't have to make them for Disney either. The next thing to think about is dining reservations. And at Disney, this is quite important. If you are going to want to eat at the more popular restaurants, you do need to make those reservations ahead of time. You can make them 60 days out. And if you're staying in a Disney hotel, you can book 60 days out for 10 days of your vacation. If you're going for 2 weeks, the last 4 days, you are going to have to wait until those roll around. So it's 60 days plus 10 basically if you're in a Disney hotel. If you're staying off site or you're staying in a villa or something, you will just make them as the days, like each day becomes available, if that makes sense. Again, you do all of that through the My Disney Experience website or the app. And particular restaurants, you need to be on it 60 days, like right there. And sometimes even then, it can be difficult to get them. Things like Ohana can be quite tricky. Which other ones do I find? Yak and Yeti is like weirdly really hard to get as well. And although that one's not Disney operated, so I don't know whether there just isn't as much availability released ahead of time for that one, maybe. And the character meals and stuff like that, they can fill up very quickly. So if there's anything that you've kind of got your heart set on, really try and do that at the 60-day mark to make sure you're not disappointed. Sometimes you just can't get what you want, but do keep checking because things do open up. And even when you're on the trip, if you just check on the day, very often people do cancel and there is the opportunity to pick up a reservation that way. So don't lose hope if you don't manage to get something that you want. Chances are you might be able to pick one up. It's always worth asking for a walk up as well. And just circling back slightly, because I did mention this, but if you're planning on doing any of the special events, such as Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party, there's now the new Jollywood Nights event that is happening this Christmas. I'm going to be doing that in December. If you are wanting to do any of those events, don't forget to book that ahead of time. Sometimes you can get tickets while you're there if you haven't quite decided, but they do sell out. I know some of the Halloween dates, or quite a few of the dates, are already sold out, so you can be disappointed if you wait until you get there. So if you plan on doing it, I would plan on booking those tickets ahead of time. And that also goes for things like Halloween Horror Nights or any other things in Orlando that you might want to book. I would always book them before you go rather than when you're there, just to make sure that you are able to get availability for whatever it is that you want to do. So now I'm going to move on to a few kind of extra things that are just reminders for things that you might have not thought about, or things that are just easily forgotten. First of all, if you do take any medication, make sure you pack that in your hand luggage. If your suitcase goes missing and you have put really important medication in there, that is like the biggest headache ever when you're in a foreign country. So don't risk that happening. Make sure you keep your medication in your hand luggage, which you have with you, so it doesn't get lost. If you take a lot of like vitamin supplements and stuff, don't forget to pack those. Obviously, it's not the end of the world if you forget your vitamin supplements, but like me, I like to not forget to take them, especially not for 10 days or 2 weeks. I like to keep with my supplement routine. I actually have this little travel case that you can put them all in. I got this on Amazon, I think. I'll link it below. But yeah, if you do take vitamins and supplements and stuff like that, don't forget to bring those because that's very easily forgotten. And I've just written a little list here of things that I've forgotten in the past or I routinely forget. These things are very random, but I'm just telling you I forget them. So headphones can be an easy one, like your AirPods or wired headphones, whatever you use, those can be easily forgotten. Your phone charger, because usually you've been using it like the night before or the morning before you go away. It can be very easy to forget to just kind of unplug it and grab it and take it with you. A nail file. I always forget to take a nail file, and that is something that you quite likely may need. Sometimes you just like get, you know, that really annoying when you break it a tiny bit and you just get like a jagged edge and you don't have one with you. So that is something. And umbrella. Umbrella is another thing that's easy to forget to take, but very important in Florida, especially. You get a lot of rain. You can buy umbrellas in the parks, but they're not cheap. It's much easier to take a small fold-up one with you. Another thing to mention is remembering, if you have bought yourself some new shoes for the trip, is to break them in before you go. Don't buy a brand new pair of shoes and then just take them with you and start wearing them in the parks. You do so much walking over there, and even if you sort of take it fairly steady and you're not exactly rushing around everywhere, but if they're new shoes, you may get blisters, they may just hurt, they might be uncomfortable. So even if you don't want to ruin them by wearing them out, wear them around the house if nothing else. But I'm speaking from experience. my 20, how many trips now? 28? Yeah, 28. Actually, the last trip that I do this year is going to be my 30th trip to Walt Disney World. So I speak from experience. Do not forget to break your new shoes in, because you may regret that if you don't. And another thing I've written down here is to obviously download the My Disney Experience app, which you likely will have done when you're making all of these park reservations and stuff. But really familiarise yourself with the app. So have a look around it, see where you access Genie Plus, see where you can access the return times. There's a tab on there that says Tip Board. That's where you want to look to see what the wait times are and to see what the return times are like and all of that sort of things. On the lead up to your trip, just take a look every day. That will give you an idea of what the wait times are like. Familiarise yourself with the virtual queue tab, because for Tron and Guardians, that is definitely something that you're going to want to use, and it's something that you have to be quite quick, otherwise you can miss out. So if you familiarised yourself ahead of time with what you're looking at and where you need to go to do that, then you won't have any hiccups at the last minute where suddenly you don't know how to do it and the moment's over and you've missed out on the virtual queue. Because those virtual queues for those rides really can avoid you having to pay for a return time. The virtual line will take longer, so if you pay for a lightning lane, you can obviously know exactly what time you're going to go to the ride and you can get on fairly quickly. With the virtual queue, you will still have to queue, but you don't have to pay for that. And everybody can use it. Everyone has the same shot at getting a reservation, or getting a place in the line, I should say, at 7 AM or 1 PM if you're in the park for that particular attraction. So just make sure you're familiar with that and how you do it, so that you're not scrambling around on the day trying to figure it out and then missing out on the standby line. And that is most of the stuff I have on my list. Obviously, I could go into more detail about things to take with you. That's kind of a different video. This was just really a pre-travel checklist, just reminding you of all of the kind of important things to remember to do. Make yourself a list actually is one of the things that I would recommend. So make yourself like a big to-do list of all of the stuff that I've mentioned there. You might have your own things that you need to remember. Also make yourself a packing list. I used to make them all the time. Then I kind of got a bit complacent and I was like, oh, I don't need a list. But then I would start forgetting stuff because I was just kind of throwing things in and being like, yeah, that's everything. So I'd make yourself a packing list as well ahead of time so that you can keep adding to it. You might suddenly remember something. If you're an organized person and you like to have everything in place, hopefully this video has been helpful for you. Or if you're a disorganized person and you are so worried about going on a trip that requires a lot of organizing, I hope it has been helpful for you guys as well. Please do add in the comments if there's anything that you can think of. Other things, you know, by no means everything I think of is an extensive list. There's bound to be things that I've forgotten. So if anybody else has anything that you might need to think about or remember to do, there are things like remembering to cancel anything that might get delivered while you're away. So obviously you wouldn't schedule like a supermarket shop, but if you have like HelloFresh, don't forget to skip the weeks that you're going to be away. Or if you have like milk delivered, don't forget to cancel that, stuff like that. And that's another one that has just come to me. See, there's bound to be more that I haven't thought of, so please do let me know in the comments, because that will be helpful for other people if there's anything else that you can think of. And this video is going up a few weeks before I travel to Orlando again, so I'm going to be going in September to go to the Halloween party. I'm going to be doing lots of other things, new restaurants that I've not done before. I'm very excited for that trip, and it's not too far away now. So coming up soon will be a packing video, and I do also have a couple of other videos that will be coming up before then as well. So I've had a couple of weeks break from the vlogs, and now I've got a few other things, and then it will go right into the vlogs again in September. So I hope you guys are excited for those. Thank you so much for all the love on the vlogs this year so far. I know so many of you loved the trip with Catherine. I absolutely loved that trip. I had the trip with Mum this year as well, the press trip that I did. I've just been so lucky this year to have so many amazing trips, and I still have more to come. So a huge thank you to you guys for continuing to watch these videos, for being so supportive, liking, commenting, subscribing, everything that you do. Thank you so much, because it does enable me to do more of these videos, to bring you as much as I possibly can in the way of tips, like videos like this, just sharing my experiences of my trips, showing you as much as I possibly can. I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to watch. So I hope you're all well, hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.